So the question I always get asked in any seminar or any lecture I do is, does technique or tactics come first in terms of development? Well, I guess the answer to that question is multifaceted, because it really depends on who we have in front of us as to what our focus should be for any session that we do. What I've done is created a list of 4 things to keep in mind when you are deciding what you must do for the player you have in front of you. And all of this comes down to two words, developmental readiness. And when we think of developmental readiness, we think of the readiness of the learner. But one thing we always need to understand before we do anything in our sport is that tactics drive technique. Now, what we see a lot of coaches do and a lot of players do is do practice of repeated skills of the same shot over and over again, trying to get the same technique no matter what situation on the court. Now, yes, that is good in a way, but we need to practice technique in scenarios. So for example, when we think about if I want the ball to jump up higher on my opponent at the other end of the court, what I need to do is I need to probably have a steeper swing path to get the ball to go higher in terms of height over the net, to have more ability to bounce up and over the top of the opponent. Okay, yes, creating as much spin as possible as well. So my tactic will drive my shape of swing. Instead of, if the ball is short and high above net level, my forehand swing would change maybe to a more slightly higher to lower swing path. So the tactic we are trying to do, or the shot we are trying to play, will determine the technique that we have. Secondly, yes, we want to ensure that the technical fundamentals are developed as early as possible in all players. What does that mean? It means that we want to make sure that the foundations for the technique are right. We want to understand that we want a nice low center of gravity, low base of support. We want to make sure that on our ground strokes we have a nice unit turn or a nice shape of swing. We want those to be in the swing, but the style of the swing doesn't matter. We always think about looking at professional players and trying to mold a technique around that, as long as the fundamentals of the stroke are done and are set early in a player's development. The third point is we must try to link perception to action. What I mean by that is when we are playing on the court, in tennis, we play a send and receive sport. So the player at the other end is hitting us a ball. We have to determine how high it's coming, how fast it's coming, how much spins on the ball, what direction they've played the ball in, before we can then determine our movement and our stroke to be able to play that shot. So if we think about perception, everything we do in the game is about reading the game, reading the ball. So as a coach, I try to randomly feed rather than always close feed the drills, which it comes into this area here in the fourth point of open versus closed drills. I try and do random feeding, different scenario feeding, whether it's deep feed, short feed, low feed, high feed, wide feed, etc., and continually mix up the different feeds, so therefore my player can work on their technical elements in different scenarios. So for me, it's all about the player that's in front of us, understanding that these are the 4 key points to developing what we need to do in terms of our technique and tactical fundamentals, and make sure we have a balance of both. I don't think one goes over the other, but I think it's important to understand that there's a balance, and that developmental readiness is our key to what we have to do, because we have to understand the person that's in front of us and the developmental readiness they have to be able to accept the information we're about to give.